Hello, everyone, and welcome in. Happy Earth Month, Earth Week, almost Earth Day. We are so glad that you're coming in to join us. We've got an amazing lineup of conversation and discussion between Best Bees beekeepers from across the country today, and I'm so excited to dive in. We're going to give everyone a few minutes to trickle in. While you guys are coming in, I'm going to go ahead and launch a poll. This is just a fun poll, so no pressure here. I'm just asking you guys some questions. First question is your experience with bees. The second question is your favorite pollinator. And third question is how you are celebrating Earth Day. So feel free to take the poll as well as dropping in the chat. Where are you coming in from today? Who are you? If you know any of the beekeepers, if you're clients of ours or friends of the beekeepers, say hello to Brenda, Rita, I combined your names. Say hello. Let us know where you're coming in from. And the Q&A tool of Zoom is going to be reserved for the questions that you would like answered during the panel discussion during today's webinar. So please feel free to use that Q&A section for those questions that you would like everyone to answer at the end. So go ahead, let us know where you're coming in from. Take our poll. And yeah, welcome in. Brenda, Rita, Ronnie, thank you guys for being here. We're so excited.
Yay, super excited. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, awesome. It looks like we've got Montgomery, Illinois, Boston, DC.
Nice.
North Carolina, Texas. Nice. We're representing a few time zones already. I love to see it. Thank you, especially to everyone who's calling in your mornings. If you don't have your cup of coffee or a nice beverage, grab that, settle in, get comfy. Should be a great talk. All right, we'll give everybody one more minute. We'll wait until 12:03. It just turned 12:03, so we'll call it that. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close this poll. Let's see what people ended up answering. I'll share the results so everyone can see it. All right, what is your experience with bees? 20% are beekeepers. Rad.
Nice.
Welcome, beekeepers. 16% of you have bees on your property, so that's amazing. And 64% are just people who love bees. So welcome. We love you guys for loving the bees. Next, we have your favorite pollinator. We have 16% hummingbirds, 23% butterflies, 9% bats, 4% moths, and 46% bees. I love it. And I like the people who selected wind there at the end, just a 2%. Awesome. And then lastly, how are you celebrating Earth Day? We've got 27% planting a flower, 14% volunteering, amazing, 64% getting out in nature, 39% buying and supporting with local farmers, and 70% attending an educational event like this. It's 100% of you guys that are here, but thank you for being here. Again, we are so excited. I'm going to stop sharing this so that I can get my screen situated. All right, so another quick recap for y'all. We are going to do some intros at the beginning of this webinar. Then we're going to hop into some pre-written questions that I'll run through and moderate for the team. And then we're going to make sure to leave plenty of time at the end for Q&A from you all for our beekeepers today. If you would like to send a question for me to share with this team for them to answer, please use the Q&A widget tool of Zoom. If you use the chat, I might miss it. It's hard for me to kind of manage both. So use the chat for chit chat, discussion, saying hello, and use the Q&A for those questions that you would like answered at the end. All right, that's the plan. Is everyone ready to jump on in? Our beekeepers, y'all ready?
Ready.
Let's do it. Cool. I wanted to just quickly introduce Best Bees for those of you who don't know who you're talking to today. Best Bees is a company based out of Boston in 21 regions nationwide. We are a research-based beekeeping service, and our mission is to improve bee health and expand the bee population. All of our beekeepers are collecting data while they're in the field. So they're not just beekeeping, they're also collecting data for the teams to use to educate and inform decisions being made in the field, as well as our scientific team to study and understand what is really happening with pollinators across the country. Our offerings, we have three kind of main offerings. So beekeeping services, the core of our business, who we are, who we're talking with today. Engagement, a huge part of what we do is also education. So what we're doing here today is educating our friends, our communities, and our clients about bees and about beekeeping. And lastly is reporting. So again, we're science-based, we're collecting data, and we like to use that data to make great reports for both our clients and for our research partners to understand bee and pollinator health. So that's a little bit of who we are. Let's get into who we're talking with. Ronnie, tell us about yourself.
Hello, I'm Ronnie. I'm from Sacramento, California. I moved to Boston to join Best Bees about a year and a half, almost 2 years ago. And I'm a special operations beekeeper in Boston and a data analyst for the company.
Cool. Welcome, Ronnie. I get to work with Ronnie at our Boston headquarters, and he is such a light and amazing team member. I'm so glad you get to be here today. Excellent. Brenda.
Hi everyone, I'm Brenda. I am in the New York region. I've been beekeeping for about 6-7 years now, but I've been with Best Bees for 2 years. Outside of beekeeping, I'm also the deck chief, so I make sure that the shop is always maintained and then we have all the equipment we need for the seasons.
Amazing. Thanks for being here, Brenda. I cannot wait to hear about your experience being a beekeeper in New York. I know it just still blows my mind every day, some of the places we have bees, so I can't wait to talk more.
Yeah.
Awesome. Rita.
Oh, my name is Rita, and I am from Seattle, so I'm on the West Coast, kind of the opposite of all the other folks here in the panel. Yeah, I've been a beekeeper with Best Bees for just over a year, and beekeeping in general for just over 2 years. And I'm also our apiary manager out here. So we have kind of like, I was considered like a stable for bees, so we have all kinds of hives that we can use for resources and fixes for all of our other, client hives throughout the region.
Amazing. Welcome, Rita. And what a beautiful setting you're in with all of your plants. I can tell you're not just a lover of bees, you're definitely a lover of plants from what I can see.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here. Awesome. So now we're going to jump into just some pre-written questions that I'm going to walk through with you guys, help warm up our crowd here, our attendees, to think of some great questions to throw in as well. So the first question, one of my favorites, is what made you start beekeeping? So Brenda, you start us off. What made you get into beekeeping?
Honestly, absolute curiosity. I saw in the poll that a lot of people said that they just love bees, and that's pretty much how I got into it. I walked into a restaurant that someone wrote beekeeping really big, and I didn't know much about it, so I just did my own research and I'm obsessed. And now I'm here. 7 years later, I'm here. So just
Incredible.
curiosity.
Sounds like it really stuck.
Yeah, it really did. It really did.
Cool. Rita, tell us about your journey.
Yeah, so when we were kind of preparing for this panel, I was like, am I allowed to say existential crisis? As I was like in a very, kind of dark place in my life. I had been in the restaurant industry for a long time, which I loved for all of its own reasons, but I, was ready for something different. I wanted to find like the thing that I was really going to do with the rest of my life. And yeah, so I kind of sat down and made an inventory of all these things that I hadn't done with my life yet that I wanted to. And for some reason, beekeeping was at the top of that list. And at the time, I lived in a place and had the money and time and resources to be able to dive into it. So I did. And yeah, I was kind of hooked from then on out.
Amazing. We're so glad you did. And I welcome your pet. Who's your friend?
They just cannot stay away from the camera, man. If there's a cat in the room, they will find the Zoom meeting.
They sure will. Awesome. Ronnie, what about you? What brought you into beekeeping?
Yeah, so I did a field quarter course in college. Spent 7 weeks with other students in the wilderness doing all types of different research projects. And for our final project, there was a group that was wanting to do a pollinator study. the other groups were filled up, and I was like, all right, fine, we'll do this. Went in with open mind and ended up really enjoying everything that I was doing, just like observing different pollinators, bumblebees, wasps, honeybees, and butterflies. List goes on, and I kind of got hooked. And I came back to campus, and I was like, wow, I want to keep doing this. And I found a group of students on campus who was looking to put a hive on top of our life science building. And I was like, that sounds really cool. Let's do it. And so we were able to get that going and get that started. And I just checked back with them recently, and they have like a whole apiary up there, like 5 hives, which is awesome. Yeah, so that's how I got started.
So cool. And for your age, you have so many years of beekeeping experience already because you started so young, which is incredible. It's so cool. All right. Well, that's amazing. Let's jump into our next question. So I think it's maybe one of the questions you guys get the most when you're walking around in your bee suits on client sites and getting a coffee at a coffee shop is like, what the heck is it like to be a beekeeper? What's it like to be a beekeeper with Best Bees? Tell us a little bit about your day-to-day, your life as a beekeeper with us. Ronnie, you start us off.
Okay, yeah. So as a special operations beekeeper, my day starts with looking at the hives I have to visit that are troubled or are in need of some kind of fix. So I make sure that I have the resources available. We have a great apiary team that brings me the resources that I need to be able to do what I need to do and get those hives not only back on track but up to speed. And then it's just stop by stop, kind of going in the hive and, playing with bees all day, come back, unloading and preparing for the next day to do it all over again.
And you're all around Boston, right? Different rooftops and folks' backyards. Tell us about your experience kind of being out and about in this area.
Yeah, so I'm fortunate that I get to travel all around New England, really. So some days are, amazing rooftop views such as this, and then some days it's, a quick drive out of the city to a client's backyard. So every day is different, which is fantastic.
So cool. Rita, tell us about your day-to-day.
Yeah, so in the Pacific Northwest, we have like pretty defined beekeeping seasons. There's the stereotypically very rainy, very dark kind of part of the year where we don't get much beekeeping done. They all kind of hunker down. And so during that time of the year, we do a lot of shop work, which is kind of nice for the variety in a certain way because you get this time that's almost like a meditative kind of reflective time in the shop to like refurbish hive equipment and was kind of prepare resources to go out into the field when you do hit where we are now, springtime. And actually today for us in the Seattle region is our second day of installs. So this is like our big crazy season. Yeah, where of course all the clients and everybody get really happy because, we kind of joke, we call it bee Christmas because everybody gets their little, like package or nucleus hive of bees delivered right to their house or, their corporate, location. Yeah, so right now it's just kind of like going to the apiary really early in the morning, picking up a bunch of nucleus hives, and then just playing bee Santa and just dropping them off all over the region for the next week or so.
Amazing. Yeah. In the world of beekeeping and at Best Bees, our beekeepers are busy every day, but I would say the busiest week and days of the year are literally the days that Rita's in right now, where the bees come and get installed. So for you to be here speaking with us today, Rita, in the middle of, one of the busiest days of the year is incredible. I feel honored that we all get to take a little bit of your time before I know you're just going to be getting right back in the field to get those bees to their new home. So thank you again.
Of course, happy to be here.
Brenda, what about you?
Pretty much aligned with Ronnie and Rita. I like to look at beehives kind of like patients, and we're the doctors for them. Walking up to a beehive and just kind of checking out the scene and making sure that the queen is doing what she needs to be doing, that the hive has enough food. So pretty much inspecting, making sure they're healthy. And because of the workshop that I do, I also am part of that reset, that refurbishing that Rita says of the equipment. So happy to be a part of just the reset. Just make sure every beekeeper has what they need when they go out on their fields. So
Amazing. All right. And this brings us to probably one of my favorite questions. I feel like my vision of it is that you guys probably see incredible things every time you open the hive. And I want to know, what's the most fascinating thing that you've seen when you've opened a hive? Rita, I'll have you start us off with this one.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my answer is a little less fascinating thing I've seen when I've opened the hive and more of a fascinating thing that came out of the hive. But me and my coworker Phoenix were at our Expedia campus here in Seattle, and they have this very big field, or used to, between us and the beehives that they have. Beautiful campus too, lots of like natural pollinator habitat that they've put in on purpose, you know, which is really nice. But we were walking across the field to the hives and started to hear this like very loud sound, you know, and we're like, well, that's funny because it sounds like bees, but we're not anywhere close enough to the hives to be hearing that. And then within seconds of making this realization, we saw this huge cloud of bees just kind of emerging from one of the hives and flying straight for us. And it was the bees swarming. And so we just kind of stopped in our tracks and just sort of like dropped our jaws and just watched it kind of happen. And if anybody who's here, you know, is a beekeeper or has had experience with bees in the past and you've seen a swarm, like, you know how loud and impressive it is. And so they just kind of flew right through us and then off into the distance, you know, to go do whatever it is they're going to do, go land in a tree somewhere annoying where we can't reach them probably. Yeah, and it was just such a cool experience to be like in the middle of this bee storm, you know, and get to almost feel like we were a part of the hive for, you know, a few short moments.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's like, before I started working with Best Bees, I didn't have a lot of experience with bees. I always kind of pictured the cartoon swarms of being like this aggressive, dangerous, terrifying thing. And I got to last season catch my first swarm and got to see kind of how beautiful it is, and that it's such a sign of a healthy hive. And it's not something to be afraid of. And it just really shifted my perspective on what it means to see and experience a swarm. And that sounds like it was really cool just to stand there and they just kind of went right past you because they were just on their own little mission, weren't they?
Yeah, because that's the thing too, I guess, that, you know, kind of forgot to mention is that, like, you know, it's a very like opposite sort of thing where they sound very loud and scary, and yet they're in their most docile state when they're swarming. So you kind of like don't really have anything to worry about, which is nice.
Yeah. Ronnie, how about you?
Yeah, the most fascinating thing I saw actually recently. So being able to manage colonies all year long is fantastic because you kind of can see them from start to finish. And the picture on the left I took, and obviously in the Northeast, it gets really cold, snowy, all that good stuff. And last season, I had two colonies that were particularly strong all season long, produced a lot of honey. Populations were large, stable, just doing all the right things. And then the very visit right before our final check, going into the winter, I noticed a like significant population drop. And I was just like, it was like what is going on? This is not good. Where are the bees? And I was freaking out, and I was like, and they were just like 2 frame populations. And I was just like, all right, well, we'll see it. And, you know, and it was like, you know, I didn't expect to come back to the colonies in, I believe February, and they were still alive. Like had all the gear ready to like clean them out. I was like, oh, it's gonna be a sad day. And they were alive still, like at that like 2 frame size. So just kind of like, you know, understanding like what goes into a population making it through the winter, all the factors that are involved, and just kind of like how amazing bees are, to kind of like, you know, look at that picture and be like, there are bees in there alive. It's kind of crazy. But yeah, that's mine.
So cool. Looking at that picture, it just blows my mind that there's just bees in there. They're keeping themselves warm, taking care of themselves. And there's, you know, beekeepers can only do so much, and the rest of it's up to the bees. And it sounds like those bees really were ready to get through that winter. And that's pretty amazing. Awesome. And Brenda, wrap us up. What's the most fascinating thing you've seen?
I mean, I'm sure we can all agree it's a really hard question to answer. It's to select something that you find, because everything is gasping, everything is so ooh wee. But I will say that every time I approach a hive, watching them communicate with each other, their different dances, their different pheromone signs, and just sitting back for a second and not necessarily doing too much and just watching them do their thing. In this picture I took here in the middle, they're just flapping their wings to let their sisters know that that's their home. And again, taking a second to look at it is fascinating, just to see how they talk to each other and how they feed each other and how they just really handle themselves, like you said, themselves as a colony. So fascinating to see that.
It's amazing. And that's a beautiful photo that you took.
Thank you.
Awesome. So one of the fun parts about being at Best Bees is how we have hives across the country and so many different types of places that I myself and a lot of people would never expect hives to not only live, but thrive. Brenda, tell us about what it's like beekeeping in New York City, where I'm sure most of us would not expect to have or see a lot of bees.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Actually, a lot of people always stop us and ask, what is it that we're doing? Like your story earlier, where people feel like bees have a bad rep of being dangerous or aggressive or mean, and they're really not. That it's a total misconception. But it's to have them in the city, people are definitely like, are you going to exterminate something, or what's going on up there? And I'm like, no, we're actually tending to these hives. We have beehives on the roof, and people's eyes open up in sizes I haven't seen before. But it's challenging. It's a very dense city. New York City is always on the hustle bustle, and so are the bees. They have to work just as hard. But I think the upside too is, like with many birds, the habitat is a lot nicer. It's a sweeter habitat, so the bees, they do thrive. They do very well. A lot of forage, a lot of backyards, a lot of rooftop farms. So there's a lot of forage for them here. It's a crazy experience, but it's worth it. Every second of it, it's worth it.
That's amazing. I just picture you going around in the little Best Bees van with your bee suit on in the middle of
And my coffee, like running around traffic like everyone else, like honking, like I got bees in the back, you know. So.
Yeah, you truly have somewhere to be.
Oh yeah.
That's amazing. Ronnie, tell me about your experience in New England, being in Boston, outside of Boston. What's your experience beekeeping in these different areas?
Yeah, so I think the beekeeping aspect, is it's pretty similar. We don't try to change too much. I think that when you're out of the city and you drive up to someone's property, they know you, they know you're a beekeeper, and they kind of know what's going on. But there are often times where in the city, we park in loading docks and we get up in the service elevator and there are other workers there. I had an interaction the other day with a guy who I walked in with my bee suit and my smoker and, like, 2 frames in hand, and he just stops and goes, "Hey, you a beekeeper?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "So there's bees on in here?" I was like, "Yeah." I was like on the roof. I was like, "Yeah." And like he was getting ready to get off on like the 5th floor, and he was like, "Hold on, buddy, I got a couple more questions," and like skipped his floor just so he can like keep talking to me. And he was like, "I got like a bunch of questions." And that, you always find like there's so many people who like are like, "Wow, your job is so cool." And it's a very like validating thing, to be able to go home and be like, "You're right, my job is pretty cool." So I think the human interaction part, is the biggest difference. There are, a lot of people who are always like amazed when I'm downtown and I'm able to like point to, yeah, we have beehives on that roof, that roof, that roof, and they're just like mind blown and they're excited about it. So yeah, that's my take on it.
It's so cool. It's something that I don't really think about enough, that like so many of our beekeepers are not only doing the beekeeping, but they're interacting with so many people to get up to the rooftops, people when they're getting out of the van, stopping them, and then they're in the lobby, and then in the hotel, or in the hotels, in the elevators, like,
Well, hotel too, I guess.
and hotels too. Yeah. Like there's so much human interaction that you guys are doing and so much education that I'm sure you guys are doing, because people have so many questions about bees. So it's amazing. You guys are doing an amazing job out there. Awesome. And so Best Bees, I personally think, is a unique place to work. And I would love to hear what you guys like about working at a beekeeping company whose focus is in research. Rita, I'll have you start us off.
Yeah, so actually my answer to this question stems from a conversation that I got to have with our CEO, who was actually out visiting us last couple of days. And he said something that really stuck with me. He said when he created Best Bees that he wanted to create a company where he didn't feel like he had to fake being sick from work to like nurture the other parts of his life, or find time to check in with himself, or just like grow in other avenues of his life. Like he didn't have to hide from his job in order to like live the life that he wanted to live, And so with Best Bees, I feel like he's really done that, or just the company, as a whole, as we've grown, and it's a huge, big, wonderful, weird community now, like we get to actually be ourselves and bring the other parts of our lives and our other interests to Best Bees to make this place better. Like I, in my free time, like to go mushroom foraging, and a lot of folks on the Pacific Northwest are into that kind of thing. And so like, we've talked about doing research projects where we can, see how, different types of fungi can improve the immune systems of bees and things like that. So it's like we get to bring in all these other aspects of our lives to Best Bees to make it a better place, instead of having to compartmentalize, away from our jobs. So I love working for a place that values us as whole people, and not just as like these, mono sort of culture people, I guess.
That's beautiful. I love that. Ronnie, what about you?
Yeah, I think for me personally, the kind of like balance I have of working indoors in an office, and then also being able to go outside um, and just be, within nature, or in a city. And I think that the other aspect of it is just the people I have met at Best Bees are, like, without a doubt, my favorite people ever. Everyone in the Boston staff is just fantastic. And then getting to meet other beekeepers and staff from other regions, I almost feel like everyone's an expert in something. Just all the personalities that we come across. It's really just like a joy for me to go into work every day. No matter how tired I am, it's always always a good atmosphere. And that's, I fortunate to be able to say that, like, I love going to work every day, and I'm very excited to do it. Yeah, I want to keep that going for as long as I can.
I love that. And you're a huge piece of it. I know in the Boston office, as somebody there, you bring so much energy and positivity to the team. It's incredible. Brenda, what about you?
I love this company. You actually get to work as a beekeeper. Like that alone it says a lot. Like there's not a lot of positions or companies out there that will give you that chance to work as a beekeeper. A lot of beekeepers in the past have been, hobbyists or backyard beekeepers. So to be able to work for a company that holds data so highly, and be able to exchange information between every region is insane. We're all in different parts of the country, and yet we can discuss about what's going on with the bees, and when, and why, and what are you seeing, and what am I seeing, and how do you think this works? And it's such an open platform. It's really cool to be able to just discuss all the time what's happening. And whenever a new member joins the team, like they're so welcomed. And again, it doesn't matter what part of the country you're in, you'll still find out that Boston got a new beekeeper, or Seattle got a new beekeeper. It's just really cool to be able to just be in a hive, really a huge hive working together. And I think it's great. I think it's really cool. Anyone that has any interest in working as a beekeeper, I think you should really go for it. Reach out. It'll be really dope to have you on the team. But yeah.
Amazing and agreed. We are always hiring beekeepers. So any beekeepers out there who are interested, bestbees.com/jobs, plug that link,
Yes,
go apply.
true.
Awesome. And it is Earth Month, Earth Week. Tomorrow is Earth Day, and it is time for us to celebrate our mother, our planet Earth. So what are you guys doing to celebrate this year? Brenda, I'll have you start us off.
I actually like to internalize a lot on Earth Day. I try to stay in nature somewhere where I could just sit and just take it all in. Be grateful for every day, for all the food, everything that we get, all the elements that we get to work with, especially beekeeping. We tend to take it for granted. Sometimes we might forget just to look up, we're so busy looking somewhere else. So on Earth Day, I just like to, be chill and just be thankful.
Beautiful. Rita, what about you?
Yeah, usually on Earth Day, kind of like Brenda, I like to take, as much time as I can to just kind of contemplate, my own role as a citizen of the planet and of my community, and just kind of really think about the things I've done in the past year, and the things I'd like to do in the future that can, get me closer to my goals of, treating this planet a little better. And so usually I'll go find, one of my favorite places around the city or something, or wherever I can get to, and just kind of walk and think about all these things and try to pick up trash along the way and just do a little cleanup at the same time. And then today, actually, coincidentally, I am going back out in the field right after this and delivering bees to everyone. So that somehow feels like a very fitting activity as well.
It absolutely is. Ronnie, what about you?
Yeah, so for Earth Day, I like to choose a new vegetarian or vegan meal that I have never made before. I actually cheated last year, and I redid my buffalo cauliflower wings just because I think they're fantastic. But this year I'm gonna try something new. So maybe if anyone in the chat has any suggestions you want to put in there, that'd be great. And then I usually finish off the day finding somewhere to watch the sunset and meditate as well, and kind of just think about whatever is on my mind or whatever is right in front of me. Sunsets always get my brain moving a little bit. So yeah, that's what I do.
I love it. Very poetic there with the sun.
Yeah. And the meal and the sunset.
Yeah, it's well balanced. It's amazing. Cool. Well, we did it. We got through our prepped questions right on time, which is great. So now is the time for you guys, the audience, to submit questions. Please use the little widget that's called Q&A in Zoom to send your questions through. I am going to be grabbing questions and sending them out. So Beekeepers, you guys are officially in the hot seat, and we're going to see how we do with these questions that folks send in. All right, we'll start with an easy one, hopefully. Haley is asking if you guys ever get stung while you're out in the field, out beekeeping. Ronnie, have you ever been stung?
Yes. I feel like every season I get stung less. I think this year so far in beekeeping, I think I'm at 4. But only 3 of them that I deserved. But yeah, so it's I like getting more comfortable with the bees in terms of like my mechanics, but also like the equipment I'm wearing. So if I have a hive that I know is gentle and calm, and I can take my time, I don't mind taking my gloves off. And I like the feeling of the bees running across my fingers. I know some people might think that's crazy, but I love that feeling, and just like that kind of like bond and trust that you have with the bees. It's fantastic. I think when I like first started beekeeping, like I was like, I'm never gonna do that, but I'd like to get to a point where I'm just wearing the veil, t-shirt, and especially in warmer weather. But we'll get there slowly. But yeah, I get stung. I don't like to. It's not something I am like, oh, I got stung today. That's 4 for the day. It's something that I try to avoid, but it happens.
Yeah. In what situations do bees generally sting? What causes a bee to sting?
Um, for me, I think sometimes when we have so many hives a day that we have to visit, sometimes there's a bit of a drive in between, we can be a little bit quick in our inspections. And the bees, they move fast, they're everywhere. Sometimes, you put your finger in the wrong place, smusher, or you there are a number of ways, but yeah, sometimes I get stung like walking away from a hive after an inspection, being in there for a while, the bees are like, all right, are you done yet? Are you done yet?
Retaliate, they retaliate.
Yeah. So, and then you walk away, you think you're fine, take the veil off, and she starts buzzing, and it's like, all right, get it over with.
Yeah.
Just take the sting. Awesome. We'll move on to the next question. I'll probably just poke one question at each of you so we can get through as many as possible. So if somebody's interested in getting started in beekeeping, what's a good way to get started? Rita, since you're so relatively new to beekeeping and got started somewhat recently, what's your advice to somebody who wants to start beekeeping?
Yeah, I find that the beekeeping community in general, and this seems to be true like nation and possibly worldwide, is like we all love bees and beekeeping so much that we want to like share as much of the information as possible. And so like if you meet even just like one other beekeeper, you can almost guarantee that that person is going to want to just like spill all the beans. And you might have found yourself like a mentor, in that moment. So like for myself, I just kind of started Googling what was around in my region. And thankfully, we have a wealth of different local beekeeping sort of organizations or like communities. So I got started with the Washington State Beekeepers Association. And there's so many resources. Just, if you can find your local organization, essentially, they'll point you to, classes that are either like a weekend long or maybe like a 2-week thing. There's all kinds of different options. There's online courses as well. But yeah, I think like the key for me at least was really just getting tapped into my local beekeeping scene, and thankfully now like with the internet, with like Facebook and Instagram and all this stuff, it's like actually pretty easy. Like I think all I did was Google like beekeeping Seattle, and then it was just like the world at my fingertips. So, and I definitely would encourage like anybody who has just like even a little bit of interest, just like check it out. Kind of like I think that's how all three of us, got started with it, was just like a little bit of curiosity, and then you just kind of like jump down the rabbit hole. And I feel like especially once you get those first bees like in your hands, it doesn't take long for you to figure out whether it's like not for you at all and you just love bees like in theory and you'll just like see them out in the world and be like, tip your hat to them, or if you're like hooked on it and you want to do it like forever.
Great advice. I love that. All right, I'm chipping through. I love this question that I'm gonna put to you, Brenda. I feel like this is asking a parent if they have a favorite child. Do beekeepers have favorite colonies? Like, are the colony personalities really different? And do you have favorites that you get excited to go visit?
They are definitely personalities. Oh yeah, there are definitely traits. Every colony will be different. Every colony will speak to you differently. They'll buzz louder or quieter. I do get excited to see certain beehives, but mainly because of their history with me. Like if I did install a certain package or if I did replace a certain hive, I love seeing their progress through the season. So I would hate to call them my favorite, but they are like my babies. So I get very excited to see on the route list that I have a certain hive that I've visited throughout the season. So I get really, really geeked out about that. I get really excited to be able to see them again. But no favorites. I guess it's just they're all different. So I take them all as they come. So all different.
A perfect parental answer.
Yeah. Yes. Hopefully when I have my own kids, I have the wisdom and the same way to answer.
I love that. Awesome. Ronnie, we're sending another question over to you. A question about harvesting. So how does honey harvesting work? Do we collect honey at every visit, or how often are we collecting honey and what do we do with it?
Yeah, so all of the honey that we harvest goes to the client. I also saw a question about deciding how much honey to take versus leaving in the hive. So I'm kind of going to do a 2-for-1 special. So once that fall flow hits, and the bees collect a lot of that nectar, and convert it to honey, it could take a while for the wax to, or for the bees to completely wax over the frames. So I would say typically, like in the summer months, we can expect typically our first harvest for mostly for newly installed colonies. Getting that nice fall honey, spring honey. And then I don't pull honey from a hive unless one, I can take 2 frames, and I'm taking like maybe like 25% at the most. The bees need the honey for the winter, so I don't want to take too much. But there are situations where the hive is just packing it away, and they need space. So you will harvest to create more space, so that way they can continue to pack in more honey. And they'll pack a little bit more once the fall nectar flow hits. And that'll kind of be like a fall harvest might be the last harvest we do coming out of winter. If they, haven't consumed a lot of their honey, which happens sometimes, then in the like early spring, we'll pull honey. But yeah, really for, I don't like to take more honey than will cause the weight of the box to change drastically. That wasn't a really good sentence, but bear with me. So essentially, when the top box has a lot of honey in it, it may have like 6-7 frames of honey. I might take 2 depending on the season. If it's a full top box of 10 frames, maybe I take 4 frames. But I'm very cautious about making sure that the bees come first. So if there's only honey available for the bees, the honey stays in the hive. I think that's the most important part of that process.
Totally. Yeah. And it's one of Best Bees policies for all of our clients. We offer what we call a honey guarantee. So if Best Bees doesn't think it's the right fit for that hive based on that hive's health or the size of the hive, we won't always pull or harvest honey from it. And instead we have special reserve honey that client will get. So our clients will always get honey. They get a guaranteed amount of honey, but depending on what's best for the bees is ultimately what Best Bees will always prioritize. So it's not 100% of the time that you will get honey directly from your hive, because those bees might need that honey for that season. And so we are working to always prioritize the bees' health. And honey is a byproduct that we are lucky enough to get to harvest in seasons when it's appropriate. So that is great, Ronnie. Thank you for doing a 2-for-1. That really helps. Brenda, I'll send the next question to you. I lost it, but I remember it in my mind. I'm guessing you run into this a lot, especially being in New York, where people maybe aren't like excited about bees being so close to them. They're nervous. Maybe they have an allergy or a friend with an allergy. Like, what do you talk to people about when you are, not convincing them, but telling them about why bees are maybe safer, good fit for being in a city where there's lots of people?
I always remind people the amazing and the huge task that the honeybee has, along with every other pollinator in the world, is that they're literally doing that. They're pollinating vegetation, they're letting our crops grow, they're helping us with our fruits, with our veggies. So I always open the conversation with, hey, do you even know what a honeybee does? Or do you think that they just kind of buzz around and go around stinging? Most people don't know actually what they do. So that I smooth it in with that, with the huge task that they have. And I try to stay away from the honey consumption. I just always kind of like, hey, they have other things that they can offer, like beeswax and propolis and many of the things in the hive outside of honey. But yeah, I just talk to them about their job, and that they're doing a job, and that just like everyone else, they're just trying to get by. So most people are like, oh, I never thought of it that way. And then I hope that they walk away thinking, okay, a bee isn't so bad. And I
Yeah.
don't try to badmouth like yellow jackets or wasp or anything, because they are cousins. They are family. So I try to like not badmouth anyone, but I do advocate for the honeybee. So I'm like, don't worry about the honeybee. They're just doing their job.
Doing their job. I love that. Yeah, so much of it's education, and that's why events like this and so much of what we do, I work on the marketing team, and we work a lot with content, like writing blogs and social media posts, and so much at Best Bees is just about educating people about like what a bee does and what pollinators are doing, and how there's so many ways that they can benefit our society and our planet. And it just really comes down to that education. That sounds like what you're doing out there. So thank you for doing that work. All right, Rita, we'll send you the next question. I wonder if this is a hard question or an easy question. What do you think is the biggest challenge for beekeepers today? Or what is maybe your biggest challenge as a beekeeper today?
Oh yeah, that one exactly. That might
I was like,
qualify
pretty
as a
hard.
hard one. So me and my coworker Devin, we actually talk about this a lot, in that like beekeeping, maybe 30, 40 plus years ago used to kind of look a lot different, because we didn't have a lot of the environmental struggles that we have now. We didn't have some of the same pest and disease issues that bees now face. So I find that a lot, like one of the most important parts of being a beekeeper now is like pest and disease management, really, because it's something that you have to be fairly scientific about, and you have to time your treatments very well, or however you're going to do it, because there are also like manual methods of, say, controlling like varroa mites that don't involve, any sort of chemicals or things like that. That being said, too, any of the treatments that we do use are all like naturally sourced, kind of like essentially essential oil based kind of things. So yeah, but anyways, it's just kind of making sure that we are able to take care of that for the bees, because of course, like Brenda kind of touched on, like the bees are just kind of taking care of themselves for the most part. It's like we truly are. I always make the joke that we're essentially like housekeeping. Like when you're at a hotel and like they knock on your door and they're like, oh, you need fresh towels, and then people are like, go away, we don't need you right now. Like sometimes the bees will just be like, get out of here, we don't need you today. It's like we're not making them do anything. We're not like even necessarily like that helpful sometimes. Like we're just there to make sure that they're able to do the stuff that they will naturally already be doing like successfully. And so part of that is like the pest and disease management. So I feel like that is a challenge, just because you have to be very intentional and specific, and like it's a time sensitive kind of thing.
Yeah, that's great. And it leads perfectly into a lot of questions that we're getting in. One person, said, do you treat your bees or let them do survival of the fittest, essentially? So Ronnie, as our special ops beekeeper and data analyst, can you tell us a little about Best Bees kind of policy, or how we approach treating our hives?
Yeah, and we're speaking specifically about mite treatments.
I think so. That seems to be a majority of the questions.
Okay. Yeah. So we've experimented with a couple of different treatments. And we take data on every visit at every hive. So we're always looking at what's working, what's not. We're always checking for varroa mite counts. And so really it's, we do try to use the best treatments available, and we like our data to inform us on what the best treatment is for the bees. Yeah, I hope that answered that question. Yeah, we don't tend to just kind of let them go untreated. We feel as beekeepers, one of, if not the biggest challenges to beekeeping is varroa mites. So I don't think we'd be doing our job if we didn't try to do something about them at every hive.
Yeah, that's great, Ronnie. I think that answers the question very well. Thank you. All right, I'm scrolling around. We've got how many more minutes? We've got about 10 minutes. So any final questions that you guys want to get in, please send them in. One of the questions was kind of about landscaping. Yes. Okay. So Luvia asked, do lawnmowers and blowers and things like that affect hives? Is that something that we should be taking into consideration when we're choosing where to put hives? I'm not sure who would be best to answer this question. Do any of you guys have an answer and want to jump in?
I mean, I would definitely say placement of a hive is very important no matter what, but when it's specifically about lawn blowers or lawnmowers or whatnot, bees are very sensitive to vibrations and sound and movement. So if you are going to put a beehive where there's a lot of activity that comes down to like cutting and zzz and all this stuff, it's not very, I guess, I don't want to use the word appropriate, but it's not very fun for the bees. So if you could put them somewhere a little bit away from you in that activity, that'd be great. But it's not like impossible. Like if you do have activity around them, that's fine. It's just that they don't have a lot of fun, especially after us being in there doing the housekeeping. Like Rita said, it's gonna be real annoying to now hear a bunch of machineries going around. So
Yeah, I love that. It makes total sense. Cool. All right.
If I could jump in, I see a question that I like. Yeah, this one is from, oh, okay, my feed just refreshed, so I have to scroll up. Okay, it's from Louise Boone. Hope I'm saying your name right. How many queens are in one colony?
ooh.
If I could say this as dramatic as possible, there can only be one. There's only one queen per colony. She is in charge of laying the eggs. Her pheromones drive the colony. And when you mix multiple queens in a colony, you get mixed pheromones and just a lot of crazy and potentially unfortunate things could happen. And then another question I like, sorry to jump around a little bit, was from Amanda. Okay, I'm gonna say Amanda because I don't want to get your last name wrong. I apologize. But what are the hours of a best bees beekeeper? We are typically in the 8-hour range. So I know here in Boston, our operations manager schedules us accordingly. So we have a certain amount of hives that is dependent on the distance from Boston that we travel in and out from. So typically a 8-hour round trip day is pretty ideal. Starts at 7:30 to 8, and we get out ideally at 3:30 to 4. Yeah, so to a fun day in and out. Yeah.
That's great, Ronnie. Yeah. And we do have both full-time and part-time beekeepers as roles across the country. So if that helps as well, we do love having part-time beekeepers in certain regions or beekeepers that, want to do some beekeeping, but maybe not all the time. Part-time beekeeping is an option at Best Bees. And then we also have full-time beekeepers who are out there, like Ronnie said, 8 hours a day out there doing roots, being with the hives for the whole week. So that is great. Awesome. Ooh, this is a fun one. Do you guys have any favorite beekeeping books or even maybe beekeeping like resources that you reference a lot or go to frequently to learn about like best practices and what people are up to? Rita, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, actually, it's funny. I was gonna be like, "Ooh, I'm gonna jump in. I got an answer." But I guess it's a little bit of a repeat in some ways. But going back to the local beekeeping knowledge, because that's something I think maybe people who are less familiar with honey beekeeping specifically, like think about is that like what Brenda and Ronnie do in their regions is completely different than what I have to do in my region to make sure that the bees are healthy. Like, and our seasons are totally different. So it's like when you harvest honey, when you administer treatments, when you give them more space or less space, like all of that stuff depends on your like climate essentially. And so that being said, like finding local resources through like a, local beekeeping organization or something, like we have this cool resource here. It's called Honeybee Suite, like SUITE. And it's this person who's just been beekeeping for like decades and decades here. And they have a blog and a website, and they just like have this whole wealth of knowledge of, similar to this, but in blog format, where they've been like, people have been asking them questions for many years. And so now they've compiled all of these answers to these very commonly asked questions about like, how do I feed my bees during the winter? Or what's the best moisture control method, or, all of these things that we as beekeepers like have to know for our region, but like, how do you go about doing that? So I will say I've had a number of books in the past, but I found those to be like less accessible, I guess, than just like a lot of the like resources on the internet. Like personally, I guess it's nice for me to be able to like have a question in my brain that maybe a client asks, and then be able to like immediately go out and like find the answer to that question, instead of like leafing through, which, and I do have many beekeeping tomes in my possession, but it seems like for me the internet is the way to go.
Brenda, what do you think? What are your favorites?
I would want to read more. It's keyword want. I struggle a lot with the reading, even though it's very important, but I like to go with podcasts. Like I'll go on YouTube and find certain beekeepers that I've been following even before I started doing beekeeping myself commercially or whatnot. So I keep up with a lot of these Q&As similar to what we're doing. I do like the whole conversation flow of things, so I'll go on a couple of channels, and just if I see that the conversation is getting a little too weird for me, then I'll just go on to the next podcast and see what the next beekeeper is saying, because I'm sure everyone's heard a little bit of that saying where you can ask 10 beekeepers 10 different questions and you're going to get 100 different answers. Everyone's going to tell you something different. So podcast for me, I just like to jump around different beekeepers and different regions. What are they doing? What are we doing? So yeah.
Ronnie, what about you?
Yeah, I was trying to think of when a good time to go over and look at the because so there's this book called Our Native Bees, and I cannot see from here the author, but yeah, it's just a really good story that starts off by saying, hey, we all know the value of honeybees. Let's talk about native bees. And it's someone who goes around and is basically going to different areas around the country and talking about the different talking to different experts in native pollinators and native bees specifically. And yeah, it's a really good book. I enjoy it. Other than that, on the note of podcasts, like I think YouTube for me is pretty helpful. There are a lot of beekeepers on YouTube who make very informative and educational materials. So I like watching them, and like I pick up different tricks or or techniques or terminology that they use that I've kind of like pulled from this beekeep YouTuber or that beekeeper. Yeah, and oftentimes they're beekeeping in different regions than my own, so I also get like a little I also get a little perspective on what they're doing down south versus what they're doing on the West Coast at this time of the year. So creates a more holistic understanding of of beekeeping nationally. Yeah.
One final thing I want to mention too, on top of that I just remembered, is the American Bee Journal, I think it's called. So it's like a magazine. Yeah. And so that's a really good resource, especially if you want to stay up to date on like the sciencey stuff that's happening and like be on the cutting edge of that, because it kind of covers like peer-reviewed research and then publishes that in this magazine. So that is also like a huge one for me.
Yeah, it's good.
Awesome. You guys are full of so many resources. Anyone that's watching, if you guys have a resource you want to share, drop it in the chat. I'd love to know. I'm sure all of us beekeepers here would also love to know. So share any resources that you guys love as well. I think Best Bees has 2 blogs too that are great blogs. I think one is a list of books about beekeeping and another is a list of books about bees that we did a bunch of research to compile, and there's some really amazing ones in there. It's like essentially my reading list for the next year. So definitely.
I will also say, Delaney, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but if you ever see like kids books where it's like you would think like, oh, I'm not interested in that, they depict so well in pictures like what a queen looks like, what a drone looks like, what a worker looks like, and it's so to the point that you would think, well, I'm not gonna grab that book, I'm an adult. But those books have a lot of secrets where you're like, oh wow, okay, that's what a bee looks like. So yeah, I got excited real quick, that's why I jumped in, my bad.
It's a great recommendation. I just bought a bee book for my nephew who's 2, and I was like, it's time. Let's get you ready. Let's get you
Yay.
familiar with our bees.
Starting young.
Start young, exactly. Cool. Where are we at time? We are at time, y'all. You guys did great. You were in the hot seat, answered all your questions. I appreciate it so much. I want to close out here. There's a QR code here if you want to learn more about best bees or even become a client or add more hives to your properties. Scan this, come work with us, be our clients, be our partners, be our friends. Brenda, Rita, Ronnie, thank you guys so much. Any final words?
That's my finger, by the way. Just
Perfect.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us, Lillian.
Yeah,
This is
thank
awesome.
you.
Thank you for
Mhm.
everyone being
Exactly.
here.
Thanks to everyone for attending.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you guys so much. I hope you all get outside, go be with nature, go say hello to your pollinators, and we hope to see you at our next webinar. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.